If you've seen my recent deck video on the Entei Cargo archetype, you may look at Entei and say, wow, what a great energy booster for fire types. I wonder what other fire types could you pair with Entei? But what that really equates to is people trying to force Charizard to be a thing again. I mean, it was reprinted in Legendary Collection for a reason. Surely something can make Charizard be as good as I thought it was when I was 9. But you know what? My videos get a lot more views whenever Charizard is in the thumbnail, so let's do it. Let's stack a bunch of fire energy on Charizard so it can waste them. So starting off with Legendary Collection Charmander. There are other Charmanders you can use. There's some pretty decent ones from the e-reader sets, but just for consistency's sake and because I just had these on hand, you're looking at 3 copies of the base set Charmander. Same for Charmeleon. There are other Charmeleons you can use, but 80 HP on that base set Charmeleon is not bad at all, and using this thing's flamethrower attack is a pretty good alternative for if you don't want to completely set up a Charizard yet. Since that Charmeleon is so useful as a mid-stage attacker, I didn't even bother using Pokemon Breeder to go from Charmander straight into Charizard. I like the consistency of having 3 copies of Charmeleon in there as well. And then 3 copies of Legendary Collection Charizard. I actually did have 1 copy of a Legendary Collection Charizard, which kind of surprised myself, but the other 2 are the base set ones. There's really no difference. They are legally interchangeable, and for the sake of this video, it doesn't really matter anyway. So 3 line of Charizard, and then 3 copies of Entei, same number as we had in the Entei Cargo archetype video. Entei's Howl Pokemon Power lets you discard the top 5 cards of your deck whenever you play it from your hand to the field, and any fire energy found in those 5 cards can be attached directly to a fire type Pokemon of your choice, which is going to be a member of the Charizard line, with the goal being evolving up into Charizard the turn after you play Entei and load it full of fire energy, which is bypassing a huge problem that Charizard usually has, which is actually getting 4 energy on there so that you can use Fire Spin and get the sweet satisfaction of dealing 100 damage. Fire type decks were widely used in the Neo-On format, and a lot of people ran Mantine in order to counter certain fire types, mainly Magcargo, but also double gusted Enteis. And it just so happens that Mantine is weak to electricity, and Neo Genesis Pikachu is a pretty decent attacker for colorless energy. You can actually use your fire energy to attack with Pikachu and potentially to hit a Mantine, if not just scare it back to the bench, until you are set up enough to double gust it back into the active position and just knock it out before it can attack any of your fire type cards. No Cleffa in this deck, so if you do want to add them in, you absolutely can, but most other decks in this format would start their games with Cleffa, so I like the strategy better of just let your opponent Cleffa and then use a copycat. Or if they're like this deck and have the same idea, you could just use these 2 copies of Professor Elm. Or if you don't think you need that Pikachu at all, I guess you could take it out and put another 2 Professor Elms in there, but then you would really only have 6 basic Pokemon in the entire deck. You don't want to overcrowd, but you also don't want to skimp either. Got 3 copies of Mary in here instead of Bill to combo with those 3 copies of Oracle, because with Oracle you can take any 2 Pokemon out of your deck, put them on top, and then use a form of draw power in order to just get those 2 Pokemon into your hand instantly. This is a speedy way to get a Charmeleon and a Charizard into your hand, or if you've already got one of those and you just need the Entei into your hand, that way you can get the energy acceleration, go for it. For this deck, I prefer Mary. That way you can recycle a couple of cards from your hand that you don't immediately need, because you're going to be using Entei sometimes repeatedly depending on the game situation. You can use Scoop Up to get Entei back into your hand where it's safe, and then replay it whenever you need a refresher on energy. So you're going to be discarding a lot of cards from the top of your deck. You don't want to needlessly just draw or discard anymore. So with Mary, you can draw 2 cards, put 2 cards back. You're not really decking yourself out all that much. Double Gust is going to be super crucial in getting those easy knockouts. Because Charizard is investing so much in 1 attack to deal 100 damage, you want to make sure that that's gonna be an OHKO. If there's a Cleffa with a Focus Band out on the field, there's no reason you should be attacking it with Fire Spin, because you're going to have to flip 2 coins to knock it out anyway. It's not going to work. You're going to be discarding energy needlessly. Using your double gusts at the right time will be the most strategic part of playing this deck. You want to make sure that every single Fire Spin you set up counts. You don't want to waste energy on attacking Pokemon that are just going to get no damage done to them because you've had to flip so many coins. Running 3 copies of Goldberry in this deck, because Charizard is a high HP Pokemon, you may want to substitute those in for Focus Band for your 2 Pikachus if you think you're going to be attacking with them a lot. And if you're attacking with them a lot, that means you're up against water cards, which means that Charizard will be in danger of an OHKO, and you may want to mix and match some Focus Band in there with your Goldberries. The Experience All Trainer card is going to help you reuse energy so that none is wasted. If you know a Pokemon's about to be knocked out, attach an Experience All to it. That way an energy gets transferred when it gets knocked out. 2 copies of Fisherman to help you recycle those fire energy that are getting discarded every time you use Fire Spin. And Town Volunteers to also help recycle that energy, but also some of your Pokemon cards as well. Running 18 energy in this deck, ideally I would want to stick to 20, but I did want to put 2 copies of that Neo Genesis Pikachu in there to help cover those Mantines that show up so often. But let's just take a second to get into why Charizard doesn't work as well as Magcargo. Yes, you are dealing a guaranteed 100 damage for discarding 2 energy, which is something that Magcargo can't quite accomplish. But what Magcargo can do is control how much damage it is doing in exchange for also controlling how many cards get discarded. In a lot of cases, like against baby Pokemon, you can deal 40 damage without having to discard anything. In this format, you do have the option to use Expedition Charizard, which has the same amount of HP. Its Poke Power extends to all Pokemon on your side of the field. Not that it would really matter for this deck, but Scorching Whirlwind for the same amount of fire energy deals more damage, and the amount of energy discarded is all up to coin flips. You could be discarding no fire energy, or you could be discarding 4 fire energy, so it all kind of averages out to be just as good as the Legendary Collection Charizard. Overall, you just have to realize that Entei Cargo was an archetype because people had already played through all the different fire types they could pair with Entei and figured out that Magcargo was the best option. Everything else didn't have nearly as many strengths, or it had more weaknesses. But if you're dead set on using this Charizard in a deck, pairing it with Entei is probably the best way to do so. Because of the nature of Entei and Charizard, it's very difficult to mix other types into this deck, and Pikachu will help protect against Mantine, but it will do absolutely nothing against Kabutops or any of the big Feraligatr archetypes. I am very sorry, Raphael, for shitting all over Charizard, even though that is a cornerstone of this channel. But I do thank you for your request, and I did have fun building the best build of this EnteiZard deck that I could. I'm always open for requests for any vintage Pokemon deck, so if you've got one, chuck it down there in the comments. Otherwise, you can find all of my social media links in the description for this video. And until next video, goodbye.